spotlighting Hawaii's leaders.
We want to bring in Governor David E.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Lieutenant Governor, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Mayor Derek Kawakami.
Thank you so much, Senator, for being here.
Spotlighting the issues.
Where is the virus right now in our community?
How much is this overall going to cost the state?
How are you responding to the community's concerns? Talk about the level of citations that you guys are writing.
Spotlight Hawaii with Yunji Denise and Ryan Kalei Suji on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.
Well, aloha, happy Aloha Friday. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Great to see so many of you here already. I'm Yunji Denise, joined by Ryan Kalei Suji. This is Spotlight Hawaii. And Ryan, we are heading into the world of politics this morning to shine the spotlight on the race for governor.
That's right. For the past couple of months, we've been speaking to the various candidates who will be seeking political office this year. And joining us this morning out there on the North Shore is council member as well as candidate for governor, Heidi Tsuneyoshi. Good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. We know you're out there on the North Shore in district, but we appreciate you joining us this morning.
Thank you so much, Aloha, and thank you for having me. Happy Aloha Friday to all of you out there, and thank you for this opportunity.
You know, we want to start off with, of course, just a few weeks ago, you announced your candidacy for governor. Just if you can talk us through this decision to take this jump from the city council and seeking this higher office.
That's a really good question, and it's something that I did take a lot of time and consideration over thinking of what the best place for me to be in service to the community, which is always my main focus. And knowing that running for re-election was something that was considered the next step for myself. For many, including my constituency, it was a difficult decision to make the decision to run for governor. But I felt after thinking about everything and the experience that I've gained through the years at the city and seeing everything happening at the state level, that it was important for me to take that next step and continue on in my service to the people if I'm blessed to do so at the level of the governor.
Tell us a little bit, for those folks who aren't familiar with your background leading up to this. Of course, we know that you worked for the DOE and, of course, now serving on the council. But what about your specific work experience and life experience do you think suits you for this office?
Sure. So the thing that really brings me always back to the importance of running for office is that I do have strong roots here in our home, our island home. My mom, native Hawaiian Chinese. My dad came to the islands with the military, with the U.S. Navy. So with a lot of things happening in our state today, I think there's a really important need to stand up for the people of this place and to all those who have come and show respect to this place, and that we make sure that any decisions made consider the people that are from here and are those who are rooted here, and to all those who have come to play a part here, that we all come together with balance and compromise and respect for each other. So that balance between having those local roots and my dad from a small town in Waycross, Georgia, I think really helped me to have a comprehensive view of what it takes to balance and make sure everyone feels welcomed and respected.
One of the things we also know that you will be running on the Republican ticket and seeking to represent the Republican Party in this race. The Republican Party has not had a governor, in office since Governor Linda Lingle held that seat, and really outnumbered when you look at the terms of representation in the State House and Senate and in various seats of government. What makes you think that this is something that you would want to take on, obviously, as an underdog in the minority party? But do you think that you have a viable shot with the Democrats and the strong hand that they hold in Hawaii government?
I believe having served at the city level, as you know, is nonpartisan. And at the city level, we're held to the checks and balance and accountability of the mayor and the administration and the city council. And I've seen that when there's a healthy dialogue of being able to have a checks and balances, that it's good governance and it's good for the people. And I think now more than ever, we realize that it can't be about the party. It needs to be about the person and what that person can bring to the table and their experience. And I think there's no better time to move forward on really expecting and wanting a two-party system to be able to balance the needs of our state. So I am very excited about the opportunity to run as a Republican and to work with the Democrats. As we know, the Democratic Party has had a very stronghold in our state for a long time. And being from Wahiawa, I do understand our Democratic roots and all that the Democratic Party has brought. But I do think it's also important to understand there's other other things that need to be considered moving forward and other voices that need to be heard moving forward, and that we can all come together at the end of the day and do what's right for the people.
You know, the governor is responsible for so many things, but one of the things I've heard you speak about is affordable housing. Tell us a little bit about, if you were to make it to that office, what you think the governor's office can specifically do to work on this problem. This is an issue that really, no matter what candidate it is and no matter really what office they're seeking, they talk about affordable housing. So what do you think that the governor's office specifically can do to work on this?
Sure. I have great concerns as a mom of 2 adult children now. My girls are 24 and 22, of so many of our next generation feeling like there's no opportunity for them to live here and make a life and have a family here. And so many of our own family and friends have already moved away. So affordable housing and being able to realize true affordable housing is very important. So first, I wanted to, as the next governor, really work on and move forward on the promise made to the Native Hawaiian population with the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, that it really is a way to get a lot of those who have been promised housing, which is in our constitution to do so, to move forward on getting housing for the Native Hawaiian population. And in doing that, we can then move forward in so many other ways of helping everyone else with affordable housing, to include working with the city as far as our general plan of where housing goes and how we decide where that goes. As a member of the City Council, Honolulu City Council, for the past 3 years, it's very important to look at where we're developing and what infrastructure is available for water, sewer, and electric. So as the next governor, I want to focus all our development rights to affordable housing projects and not luxury high-end developments that have a handful of affordable housing projects, but projects that are completely affordable housing, to include rent-to-own programs, which has shown great success in other states, that to get buyers, first-time buyers into the market, rent-to-own programs are very important. Also, programs that help with the first down payment. As we know, making that first down payment is so difficult for a lot of residents because we don't have the capability to save up for that down payment. So programs to help for a down payment for first-time homeowners, and really looking at ways to work with our private market to keep those houses that we have residentially in a local market and not an international market. So as a council member, I've been very strong in advocating for cracking down on illegal transit vacation units, because we know the more that investors go into our residential neighborhoods, the harder it is for us and the more inflated our market gets. So really looking to continue all of that work as well.
Well, the past few years have been a turbulent time for any leader in any capacity with COVID-19 and the impacts that it has had on overall government and just in the population and the lives of the people within Hawaii and beyond. As governor, you know, the pandemic may be winding down, but no doubt it will impact things moving forward. I wanted to get your thoughts on how you believe the state can move forward from COVID-19. You know, we are seeing more numbers on the rise in other parts of the world with this other variant. But also your thoughts on how this administration has managed COVID-19 and what maybe you would have done differently had you been in position.
Sure. I think that's really an important question. And it's a really important for everyone, as we're talking about coming out of the pandemic, to really look back at all that has happened throughout for our businesses, for families, for individuals, for students, for student athletes. And in so many ways, I feel we could have done a lot better job from the start. I think that we should have had a lot more focus on medicine and care. And this is not to take away anything from the professionals who are working hard in our hospitals every day, but I think we needed to very early on to look at increasing our hospital bed capacity, increasing our opportunities for healthcare, increasing options for medicine and treatment on the outpatient side, so that we didn't have so many individuals, unfortunately, finding themselves inpatient. And of course, once they're inpatient, the individual becomes inpatient and hospitalized, the prognosis is not good. So as governor, I would have really focused on increasing our capacity very early on. And I think moving forward, this is a very good opportunity to see what our healthcare systems look like, to create a more sustainable way to deal with medical issues once they come forward. So I do believe that we have to focus on medicine instead of mandates. As we know, the mandates had quite an effect on many, and we need to do better for the people.
One of the things that you'll also be facing is the influx of tourists. And we got used to having no tourists. And now, of course, spring break is upon us, and then the summer season to follow. If last summer is any gauge, then it's going to be a busy one for us. And there's a lot of people who are bristling at having just so many visitors coming to our state. What are your thoughts on tourism management? Should we look at increasing fees for certain areas? Should we look at, a landing fee for tourists when they first get here? How do we address this issue?
Well, definitely working with the Hawaii Tourism Authority to make sure that we are working with them to manage our messaging that's going out there, and working with our airline providers. As we know, there's been different airlines who aggressively marketed right after COVID, and rightfully so. It's a free enterprise, but I think we need to work with our capacity for intake, as far as working with the airports and making sure that we're deciding how many flights are coming in, what is the capacity for us to have here as an island. And I think we have to have that conversation together and get everybody on the same page to have a choke point or a capacity of how many visitors we have coming into the islands, not only just for the purposes of being able to enjoy our island home, but in the case of an emergency, we have to make sure we have this many residents, how many visitors can be here, where if there was unfortunate emergency, that we're able to manage that emergency efficiently. So representing for the last 3 years as council member and 8 years as a staff, the rural communities, you think about the Windward coastline, and our emergency preparedness is very lacking. So we need to think about capacity, not just for our quality of life, but also for in the case of emergencies.
This is a question that gets asked and brought up almost every election cycle coming out from Heidi. Could you ask also about diversifying the economy? Certainly we know the role that tourism plays, but what do you feel is the most realistic and specific industry that we could look at to diversify the reliance on tourism?
Sure. As far as diversifying our economy, I think that we really need to focus on agriculture and different type of agricultural activities that are available to us, the high-tech agricultural components, and everything that happens with creating a sustainable community as far as food production. So I do think we really need to look to that. As we see what's happening globally and within our nation, one of my main focuses is to make sure that we in the islands are sustainable as far as our food production, and making sure if we need to go back to talking about ranching and having different things available to us, and those type of food sustainable activities that can lead to a diversified economy will not only help to diversify the economy, but help us to be food secure, so that should there be a situation that we have capacity to have access to food and water for our residents.
Interestingly, one of the things you had noted earlier is that your focus would be on medicine and hospital capacity instead of mandates. The governor's orders going away, but what are your thoughts, first of all, on the mask mandate? Has it been here too long? And second of all, the governor is carrying over the vaccine requirement for new state employees. Do you think that there should be a vaccine mandate for new hires?
I don't believe so. And I believe having a vaccine mandate in the first place divided our community, divided our families, divided many in so many ways that, in my opinion, was unnecessary. As we know, the vaccine was very effective in minimizing symptoms, and I'm very grateful for that, especially for our at-risk and elderly populations. However, we know that the vaccine could never stop the spread of COVID-19, nor could it stop an individual unfortunately becoming in contact with COVID and becoming infected with the virus. So in that sense, when the vaccine mandates came out and being at the city, the reasoning behind it, and people lost their jobs for it, was that we wanted to make sure that we controlled the spread, and that we made sure not to control how many were going into hospitalization. So in my opinion, from the very start, those two reasons were not fully developed and not fully backed by scientifically what we knew was right, as far as what was available for the vaccines to be able to do for us. So I would not make a vaccine requirement for new hires. I would also look to address the issue of those who lost their jobs due to vaccine mandates now that we're moving away from that. And I do believe also the mask mandate has been here too long. I think it has to come down to a position of choice. If you feel safer using a mask, you should definitely use that and use that as your way of managing your health care. But it really comes down to making sure that we as the government provide individuals with the confidence that we have what you need to be able to be safe. We know what to do to create a safe environment for you, and that we're going to move forward from this.
One of the other issues that will come up in the next 4 years will be what to do with what's happening over on Mauna Kea and the 30-meter telescope project. We saw, a bunch of different types of different governors actually have had a hand in this project, but we really saw last year or in the past few years the uproar from the Hawaiian community about this and their protests against this project. What are your thoughts on this project, and do you believe that it is something that should move forward on Hawaii Island?
Thank you. So I had the opportunity actually to go to Mauna Kea when there was the incidents happening, and when Kupuna and different individuals did go to Mauna Kea, the governor declared a state of emergency, as we know. And for that, some Honolulu Police Department officers were deployed to Mauna Kea to help with the emergency situation. So I took it upon myself to travel there and to see what was happening and get a real feel from the people. And I did arrive there and see that it truly was not a state of emergency, but a state of humanity, of just people crying out to say, we've asked and said this is a concern for years and years and years, and things keep happening as far as gaining access road without having the agreements in place with the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. And so there's so many things where the people have asking for a long time to stop and look at the maintenance of this sacred place, and it hasn't happened. So I would not be in support of construction of the 30-meter telescope. I think as we move forward and look in scientific pursuits and other pursuits, there's other ways we can do it while really focusing on the maintenance of such a sacred place. We need to work with the University of Hawaii and talk about their lease and talk about what has happened, what's happened with the maintenance. As we know, there's infrastructure there that has been decommissioned, that hasn't been removed properly. So in my opinion, we really need to get back to basics and stand by the agreements and the expectations of the people. And then I think we'll be able to move forward in a better way. But at this point, I wouldn't be able to support the construction.
There are some in the community who have called for the university to not be the manager of the mountain, but to turn that over to an independent board, and perhaps with more inclusion of cultural practitioners and Native Hawaiians. Do you think that the university is an appropriate steward of those leases, or should that be turned over to someone else?
I think, unfortunately, the University of Hawaii hasn't shown themselves as the best stewards of Mauna Kea, for sure. And moving forward as governor, one of the main issues that I would want to address is all the land leases that are held. As far as we know, Department of Land and Natural Resources holds accountability for the land leases with the state, and that's managed, and Department of Homelands is involved, Office of Hawaiian Affairs is involved, and mainly the beneficiaries need to be involved. So I think we do really need to look at all the land leases. As we know, a lot of our 65-year land leases are coming up, including those with the military and others. And now is a very important time for us to do what's right by the land and the people, which is another main reason for why I thought it important to run right now as a Native Hawaiian and someone who's very connected to this sense of place, is that we haven't done a good job and as being stewards of the land, and we really need to do better overall, including what's happened at Mauna Kea.
There is some frustration in the community overall with many who are in the public service office and who hold these elected offices, because of the corruption and different types of allegations that are being brought up, and different lawmakers that have been charged with such offenses. Wanted to get your comments on where we're at. I mean, when you look at some of the things that have transpired over the past few years, dating back to, of course, the Kealohas, to what we've seen recently with local lawmakers in the state capitol. What are your thoughts on just how we get rid of this overall corruption that seems to be rooted in our political system, and the confidence by voters out there in the community who maybe aren't as enthused about this election cycle because of what they're seeing?
Right. Well, Being a fairly new to political office, I've been holding as a council member for 3 years, going on 4 years now. I can say for myself, seeing from the inside out, I do share in the concerns of what happens in government. I share in the frustration of the people to say we want answers for certain things and the answers aren't given. We don't understand why certain things keep on happening. So for myself, that's another reason why I felt it very important to run for the office of governor, because I do believe it has to be a complete change of how government relates to the people and the transparency that is provided to the people in government, and to the systems approach of how the outreach is, and the systems approach in how issues are dealt with when there is corruption that we obviously know has happened, and what the ramifications of those allegations are. Many times you hear about it in the news and it's just a blip for a day or two and then it goes away, and the people wonder what really happened with that. Like, how do we rectify that within ourselves to know we can trust government again? And as the governor, I would bring to the people and provide them with all the answers that they have questions for, and be able to move forward to start rebuilding trust in the government. So a big thing is transparency. Big things is also fiscal responsibility, because in a lot of ways, the taxpayers feel like money is spent for different reasons, and it's unfortunately a lot of times in self-interest, and some of that has been playing out as well. So just really transparency, fiscal responsibility, and accountability from government will be some of the main things I focused on from the top down.
On that subject, there was a question of the use of some of the money that you had at your discretion in the city council. Can you talk a little bit about that and just give us some clarity on what happened there?
With regard to the forensic audit for the rail project, coming into as council member, one of my main concerns was how the money was spent for the rail project. As we know, that has plagued our city and county, and really our state, for quite some time, about the fiscal burden that it's placed. And so coming in and being able to look at all the records, I did believe that a forensic audit was needed to really look at everything that happened with all the finances and how decisions were being made. So I was able to work with my other council members and get the funding approved and get the vote for the forensic audit. And at the last minute, it was decided by leadership that we wouldn't be moving forward on that forensic audit. So I was very disappointed by that. Many who had been hoping for that to happen within the communities were disappointed by that. As governor, I would definitely make sure to work on all those areas, and to make sure when there are questions from the taxpayers, from the general public, as to what's going on and why, that we do it not only for the taxpayers, but just to make sure the right thing is happening. And so really hopeful and excited to be able to bring that sense of openness and transparency to government from the state down.
When you're talking about the rail, do you believe, what are your thoughts about, the Mayor Blangiardi's proposal of having the rail project stop in Kaka'ako rather than going all the way through Ala Moana? And how do you feel overall about where this project is and how we get it to its end?
Right. So there has been a call for quite some time for myself and others about what our alternatives are, as far as making sure that this project doesn't financially burden our city so much that we can't provide core city services. And with Mayor Blangiardi's report and statement in his State of the City address that there was consideration of stopping at City Center, that to me was a step in the right direction of what I and others have been noting for some time now, is that we aren't going to be able to physically build the project all the way to Ala Moana. And I've said from the start that it was never about being against the project. I've lived in Wahiawa, raised my two girls in Wahiawa, and drove them into Kamehameha School. So we've sat for hours and hours and hours in traffic, do understand the need for multimodal transportation. But I do believe that it has to be done in a way that's fiscally responsible. And this project from the start wasn't done that way. In regards to the mayor's recent discussion of stopping at City Center, I have concerns about that, and if that is even the best option for us. So I'm hopeful to see the recovery plan in full, which Hart is saying we should be getting by the end of the month, or in early April. Unfortunately, we get the information after budgets have already dropped. As you know, we're in the budget process at the city council. Decisions have been made about setting aside a percentage of our transit accommodation tax for the rail project, which is also a concern because those numbers were balanced based on the indication of going all the way to Ala Moana at over 11 billion, and now we're hearing a little over 9.8 billion will be what we need. So this again goes back to having information that we can make accurate decisions on what to do. And so I think there's a lot more discussion that has to happen. And whether we stop at City Center or someplace else, I do think we need an interim terminus.
I just want to give you an opportunity here because there's some questions in the comments. And she said, could she please comment on the allegations of financial abuse in your office? You know, we had Tommy Waters on here to talk about the discretionary spending that council members have. And there were some questions as to where some of your funding had gone. Can you just provide clarity to Anne Marie and others who are asking those questions?
So early on, there was just a request with regards to my use of an outside public relations agency to manage some of my public relations. And so that's a function that can be used with our contingency allocations. And because I do have such a large district, we have 40% of the island geographically. First coming into office, I really did want to make sure that we were getting information out. So we did make use of those funds with someone who helped with our public outreach. And so that was the reason for that allocation.
As we're wrapping up here, I did want to also just kind of get a better sense of your personal life, a little bit more about the personal side of you. You did mention that you have two daughters, adult daughters, but what other things do you think people would be surprised to learn about you that maybe not everybody knows?
Well, I think just the part of being a local girl, because, you know, just having that background and that mixed look that a lot of people are like, what's her background? So Hawaiian, Chinese, German, Cherokee Indian, and Irish. My daughters also have Japanese, so two daughters, 24 and 22, like you said. And also just having the experience of moving around and seeing a lot of places, living in Japan for some time, Washington State, Washington, D.C., traveling a lot as growing up in the military, just seeing so many different places in the world, know that where we live is such a very, very special place. And that really drives me to make sure that we take care of our people and our place. I've also had a varied experience as far as the places I've worked. As mentioned, I've worked in the women's prison doing the first ever parenting class, was the statewide coordinator for a child abuse prevention program, worked in the Department of Education as a behavioral health specialist and Department of Health. And so have a very wide range of background professionally, and having spent the last 3 years at City Council and the previous 8 years as a staff member, have learned a lot and seen a lot about what we're facing and what it's going to take to create a brighter future moving forward. So just very excited to do that.
I love all of those details. Lastly, I know you still have a primary to get through, but of course, once you do that, if you are successful in that endeavor, you'll be facing either Josh Green, Kirk Caldwell, or Vicky Cayetano. Those are at least the three candidates that we know of. Kai Kahele could be in there somewhere. There's been a lot of talk about that. But assuming that it is one of those three, what makes you, do you think, distinguishes you from the other candidates?
Sure. Definitely my diverse background professionally and personally, but also having worked at the city for the past 3 years as a council member, I think it's helped me to see a lot what happens with local government and how the interplay between state and congressional level of government, and coming from the local county government where we tend to be more hands-on and more very open to public, and our public hearings and everything happens a little differently. And seeing the interplay between the state and the county, there's so much that can be done better, in my opinion, if we think about the interplay between state and county government and congressional government. So having that experience, I think, really sets me apart from any other candidate. And I think it is time to start with figuring out how all levels of government can really work together. And that's really my strong suit. As a council member, I've been able to work with congressional, state, and our local government to move projects and to address issues on a variety of issues, including flooding and all different kinds of things. And I see how important it is to be able to bring all parties to the table, and really look forward to doing that.
All right, before we let you go, I just wanted to allow a final opportunity for any final thoughts and closing statement to those who may be watching this morning. And, you know, as we continue to head on into this campaign season, are considering all their options for governor and other officers. But your final message this morning for those who are watching and tuning in.
I just wanted to speak to the people and say that because of everything that's been going on, I know there is a lack of trust in government. To those who maybe have removed yourself from the process of government or haven't been involved in the process for a long time, that this is very critical times for us. And please reach out and get involved in any way you can. I look forward to meeting with as many of you as possible as we go out to the outer islands and continue to work through Oahu. That I look forward to hearing from you and learning what's important to you, and that we all come together to do what we need to create a bright future for all of us. So, and thank you for this opportunity today. Thank you.
Mahalo for being here this morning. Honolulu City Council member and GOP candidate for Governor Heidi Tsuneyoshi, we appreciate your time.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Great to hear from her, and interesting to really hear how she is very different than the current administration. One of the things she said right off the bat is that she would not continue the vaccine mandate for new state hires. That is something that the governor is going to keep even when his emergency proclamation sunsets. She says the mask mandate has gone on for too long, and that her focus when it comes to COVID would really be on medicine and hospital capacity, moving away from mandates, she said.
Yeah, and we got her thoughts on just how it was managed overall as a whole, and saying that there was needed to be more emphasis on medicine and treatment and medical facilities overall, and really push back on some of the mandates that were put into place by the state. And like, of course, as you mentioned, the current mask mandate, which is set to expire at the end of this month, something that she would have done away with a while back. We also heard her thoughts on projects like TMT. Of course, this is going to be one of those issues that will be brought up during this election cycle to see where candidates stand on the construction of the 30-meter telescope. She says, as a native Hawaiian herself, she saw just the impact that it has had on the community, and she is asking for that project not to proceed, and she would not support the construction of that project moving forward, as well as to relook at the management of Mauna Kea and the University of Hawaii's role in that overall development and that area as a whole.
Yeah, and interesting to hear her thoughts on tourism management. You know, this is something, of course, that all the candidates are talking about as well. She says that there could perhaps be a cap on how many visitors are allowed here, something that she says she'd want to discuss with the airlines. You know, the governor in the past has said that he can't actually tell them how many flights to come in or out, but she's saying that there should be a limit, and that could be one strategy that she would look at. So interesting to hear her thoughts on tourism as well. When it comes to the economy, she says that she thinks one of the ways we could diversify it is to focus on agriculture.
Yeah, we got a lot of different thoughts and heard her stance on a variety of issues. So we encourage you, if you've missed any portion of the interview, to go back and watch it on replay or on as a podcast as well. We'll have this up, but no doubt we'll probably be hearing from her once again as we move through this election cycle. Moving on Monday, we will be speaking with somebody else that works at Honolulu Hale, and that is the mayor.
That's right. Mayor Rick Blangiardi making big news in his State of the City address, talking about how he wants to end the rail project, not at Ala Moana, but for now, at least in Kaka'ako, saying that they just don't have the funding. And throughout his campaign, he said that if it doesn't pencil, he won't build it. And so how will the FTA respond to this? Will they allow that to go on? I'm sure rail is going to be a focus of what we talk about. But the mayor also in that address talking about affordable housing, talking about homelessness and some of the other city priorities. We'll also be asking him about, show post complaints that there aren't enough patrol officers on the beat. What does he think about that? And of course, the search for chief. So lots to talk about with Mayor Rick Blangiardi on Monday. And then Ed Case joins us on Wednesday, the congressman, talking about Red Hill, among other issues. Lots to talk about next week. So have a great weekend. We hope to see you right back here Monday at 10:30.
Aloha. We'll see you then.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.